Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and more Path of Exile 2 talk. With the patch 0.1.1, there was a surprising lack of nerfs to the top builds and items and other mechanics. That came as a relief because, while we're mid-league, personally I want to see buffs to the weak stuff, not nerfs to the strong stuff. But we still expected nerfs to things like Energy Shield and the Grim Priest Aura since they're simply so strong, and then maybe big buffs to armor and even evasion maybe, things like that. Or maybe they'll target specific uniques, raise other ones. None of that's really happening. We just have some armor related buffs, which is welcome, but will that affect things to scale the relevance of Ascendancies related to that? More than likely not. One of the Ascendancies that underperforms right now is Warbringer. It's got great survivability, but it's a slow option and could do with more output options, maybe not more survivability, which it's going to get through better armor. So where do we stand at the moment for Ascendancies? Where do we rank them compared to one another? For that, we have our opinion based on what we've seen and research and knowledge, discussion around the topic, as well as of course the ladder rankings, which give us an indication of what's popular right now in the top 100, but also where things generally place. Combining these two things, we can get a general idea, but not a perfect one of course. Just keep in mind that all of the Ascendancies can and will work well in this current version of the game, even if it's maybe ranked lower on this list. But now we can see that there are 10 level 100s out there in the standard league, compared to the one when we last talked about it a couple weeks back. In those top 10, Invoker is there, Stormweaver's there, Gemling Legionnaire's there, and Deadeye is as well. But Stormweaver being the most popular Ascendancy by far, it appears in that top 10 the most. Speaking of popularity, it's interesting in relation to this list. Here's the amount of ascends for each type of Ascendancy in the top 1000 right now. 445 of them are Stormweaver, almost half of them. Under that you got 140 Invokers, 120 Infernalists, 110 Gemling Legionnaires, which is interesting, 70 Deadeye, that's falling off. Then you got 51 Blood Mage, 20 Titans is a big fall off, 19 Chronomancers, 12 Witchhunters, 11 Pathfinders. You got the Acolytes of Chayula, 6 of them, and 5 Warbringers. So knowing what we do, it is interesting to see things like Blood Mage in the middle of popularity. But maybe considering its hefty setup as we'll talk about, maybe that makes sense. Meanwhile, Gemling Legionnaire has shot up in popularity with how effective and quite a straightforward stat stacking really is. But that's popularity, now let's talk power. Starting with number 12, with the weakest options, we have the Acolyte of Chayula, the monk. Still at 12th, its highest ladder placement currently is 93rd, but it's also the lowest on the ladder in terms of the top 1000 players. Still, it has plenty of potential with reliable stat stacking concepts. Combining the well-known Hand of Wisdom and Action Gloves, the Pillar of the Gods unique quarterstaff, you can still get great results. It's just no denying that it's not the best option to do even that. It's kind of a jack of all trades Ascendancy, but current master of none. And the perks that it provides aren't all impactful. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to have, say, better mana management for, say, your stat stacking build. Or the neat way you can greatly mitigate honor loss in the Sanctum Trial with Embrace the Darkness to prevent honor loss as much. But overall, I do think this Ascend definitely could use some love. Next, or kind of above it, it's debatable, we have the 11th place Chronomancer, which is actually 46th on the leaderboard overall. I feel like this Ascend just matters more. Chronomancer lets you RNG ignore skill cooldowns, or even have an active skill reset its cooldown. Therefore, it lends itself to potent skills that are longer in cooldown, allowing you to use them much more often. One of the best builds right now does exactly that, but maybe in an unexpected way. It's using the mace skill Hammer of the Gods, and maces and melee is not the best thing right now. So it's a longer cooldown, but you can ignore that if RNG goes your way. You can force reset it with this Ascendancy, and with the right setup, you'll be able to absolutely smash something in single target, say, using Chronomancer as this base. It's pretty clever, but it's still very niche, and with minimal showings on the ladder, I just feel like it needs a bump. Above those two, at 10th, but the final one in the kind of weaker lower tier for these, I have Warbringer, which is interesting because there is one Warbringer that's quite high on the list. On the ladder board, there's one that's 15th. Despite that, it's incredibly unpopular, and even the devs seem to know that. Warrior and its two Ascends, both of them, find themselves in the just straight up weakest location on the passive skill tree. During a Q&A, it was asked directly if they would agree Warrior has the worst offensive and defensive options on their side of the tree, and they said yes. So it's not a secret. Melee as well is in a dire state, but with Warbringer in particular, you do have quite a lot of survivability through the Ascend, you're hard to kill, and a great pick for that purpose. But you're slower and your output's a lot lower. That armor buff that's coming in is going to help with its survivability, but again, that's not what I think it needs. It's in a weird spot. There are options though. A popular, powerful option is the Shockwave Totem setup. where you stack high skill levels and then play around the totems you place. That combats its slower nature, investing in something almost outside of yourself and then center yourself around it. It is smart. But yeah, that one, again, I feel needs love. But now we get to the kind of middle of the pack sections for Ascendancies, things I think are doing fine, but you know, with more love could be that potential top contenders. But let's start with number 9, which is Pathfinder. That finds itself with a placement on the ladder at 47th with its highest player. Contending with Deadeye, which is way more straightforward and incredibly impactful as an Ascend, that's maybe why it's awkward. There were buffs not too long ago to say the Poisonous Concoction a few weeks back now, and as an Ascendancy, it leans really well into poison. So it's quite decent for its starting point to build you into an endgame setup using the Ascendancy. The Contagious Poison allows you to spread it between enemies as you kill them, helping your AoE clear, and you can get Overwhelming Toxicity to double the poisons on a target, helping you for that output but single target too. It's certainly more popular to take poison as the focus for this Ascend then, so that really means it's directly linked to how good poison is right now. If poison's better, then this Ascend is better. I suppose one of the main things you need to worry about for this Ascend then is making sure you can maintain flash charge uses through flash charge recovery. You can find that directly on your flasks as well as passives, and there's a belt that has an inherent passive to help that too. So I don't think it's too hard to set this up. But maybe if we see more power in poison in the future, we'll see more Pathfinders around. Above that at 8th then, I have Titan with a solid placement for a melee Ascendancy. Titan with its highest placement is 35th on the ladder at the moment, but I keep it back on this list because of how awkward melee is right now. I feel that in the next league, they're going to really pump up melee setups, and they are rushing to that next league within this early access as they recently confirmed. Since this is a melee-focused Ascend, I think it could be very good at that point. For the moment though, it will feel a bit of a survivability buff with the 0.1.1 patch, since armor will be improved. It does have things related to that in the Ascendancy. Stone Skin gives you a big bonus for building armor on your body armor, for example. But, you know, maybe there's going to be more help for maximum life as well. Titan gets big bonuses to maximum life. Stacking that in combination with armor is a good option through the Ascendancy. It's just not the strongest options right now. Now, outside of that, of course, it enhances your melee output with big crushing blows. And a popular build allows for that, using a normal mace to combine with the weapon type, the Cultist Greathammers, which gives you splash damage for chain reaction AoE. Combine that with freezing and shattering targets, you can get some impressive AoE clear even now. You're just not the fastest or maybe the strongest option for most of any of that right now, unfortunately. But again, I do have a lot of faith that melee stocks are going to go very high in the next league. Last up for the sort of middling ranks, I have the Ascendancy Witchhunter at 7th. This is the Ascend made from mapping though, with a chance to explode enemies you kill in AoE with built-in culling of targets, decimating health on your initial hits. The lightning focused setup became very popular with that in mind, leaning into electrocute and of course shock to build magnitude of damage. The one button clear setup feels amazing when you hit the basic breakpoints, so you're basically just perma shotgunning with galvanic shards into everything that procs the culls and explosions. On the other hand, it does have helpful potential in single target for pinnacle bossing if you go into their Ascendancy concentration mechanic, increasing your damage against those you focus long enough in single target, but also causing them to slow down their casting ability. But I think its survivability Ascend option, the Sorcery Ward, is awkward. The bigger your armor and evasion is, the bigger the magic barrier you get. But armor as a concept is something you have to stack into heavily before it actually sees real value. So cutting into that by like half goes completely against the concept. This means you just full commit to evasion instead, which is an unreliable thing at the best of times, and overall means you can't stack the Sorcery Ward shield as far as you could because you're avoiding armor. Even with the armor buffs they're doing, that doesn't change the fact that it's still cutting into that, and that sucks for armor. I just found myself bouncing around the Ascend based on whether I was doing pinnacle or mapping. But that brings us to the top 6 Ascends, which I think fit into a sort of really good category. The issue with placing these against each other is that they're all fantastic and they're all clear winners. To explain why I might rank one or above the other, it pretty much comes down to how relevant the Ascend is to the concept. So yeah, most of these can swap around in placements. They're so close that I wouldn't take this too seriously. Let's start with number 6 then. We have the Infernalist. This comes 8th on the leaderboard currently, and it's easy to see why. The top pick from minion-related builds, of course, which are very popular, even if, say, the Ascendancy is fire-related. It provides you with just nice survivability as part of the Ascendancy, the Hellhound tanking some of the damage you take, and it encourages energy shield stacking, which is already potent on its own.
Therefore, it is one of the most popular hardcore ascends to keep you alive. The issue with what appears to be its best build though, and why I've got it as 6th, comes down to how hard that is to achieve. I'm referencing how we have that interesting comet spam build as a fantastic option, using your demon form to drain life, yet you're using the Ascendancy directly to convert your mana into Infernal Flame. That combined with Energy Shield gives you a reliable buffer on that self damage you're doing, and in turn generates the energy needed to spam the comets. So it's a really cool concept for leaning into the Ascend, but the problem is that the requirements to make this work without overdipping into self-damage or enough energy generating the comets consistently is way less straightforward. Still, I do think it's a lot more interesting than the pretty common stat stacking concept that cemented itself in this league, which is a much easier concept on paper. And so that's going to start to come up as we come into 5th here with Deadeye, which is 6th on the ladder overall. This ascend is really nice, super effective, super quick. Every point in it really matters, impactful in a straightforward way. Whether you're gaining stacks of Tailwind, which gives you movement speed, evasion, skill speed, and then when enhanced, that also provides really solid damage reduction. On the other hand, you can greatly increase your damage against close range targets, and even grant yourself an extra projectile on all your shots, which is amazing for output and clear. So just from the Ascend, you're going to be fast, you can have output and survivability improvements directly. This is extremely popular with the Lightning and Freeze build that's been king for Deadeye for a while. Mostly using Lightning Arrow to spread fantastic bursts of lightning, generate cold damage, proc freezes, and with both your Heralds of Thunder and Ice, exploding these targets affected instantly. For single target though, you do need some specific gear to deal with the very mana hungry nature of Lightning Rod spam with say Cast on Shock that your Ascendancy unfortunately isn't really helping with. There's a unique ring that will have damage convert to mana which makes it really work, but yeah, I think this Ascendancy is much more relevant for mapping of course. Moving forward, I've got the very strong Gemling Legionnaire at 4th, which is also 4th on the ladder. Super simple though, this is the ultimate stat stacker, which is incredibly strong this season. With the uniques of Pillar of the Caged God, scaling your output based on the attributes you have, or the unique gloves, Hand of Wisdom and Action, ultra popular this league, you stack the main attributes, and the Gemling is ultra good at that. This Ascend directly affects that with something like Enhanced Effectiveness, with its inherent bonuses of the main attributes being doubled. The issue with this is that it really spikes when you start to really get these higher stats, so it's actually a great Ascend to pick up after you're already set up in the league. Maybe a bad choice to start it with when the economy was still getting started and the drops and options you had were smaller. If you have a main, you might have the currency to spend what you need, so you can pile power into this really quick, like the ultimate ult. And so I've noticed its popularity really spike recently. Moving forward, we're now in the top 3, where it really gets interchangeable. Let's go with Invoker, which is actually ranked 1st on the leaderboard. Ascendancy-wise, it's great though. With the ability to gain Spirit per Energy Shield and Evasion, you're able to stack Spirit really well via the Ascendancy. That encourages you to go Energy Shield and Evasion, which is fantastic for survivability, of course. Through the Ascend, you can get a % of your damage as cold damage, and also create chill ground when you freeze targets. So that works perfectly into top builds, leaning into mixed lightning and cold. Thanks to the really potent heralds, ice and thunder, you can have them work in hand, having thunder proc chill and freeze, and then you've got ice procking lightning and shock. It's incredible for mapping. But the Ascend could also really help with single target with Sunder My Enemies, meaning your crits ignore non-negative monster resistances. The Eye of Winter spell helps with generating critical weakness. So yeah, investing in crit setups is helped by the Ascendancy as well. So with how directly the Ascendancy helps the survivability and the output, it's just really good, and that's obvious now. Above it, or next to that basically, is Stormweaver. The most popular Ascendancy by far, even reflected in the top 1000. Its extremely strong and popular build concept is through Archmage and Aura to increase output at the cost of more mana. So mana stacking remains king for these builds. Stormweaver directly helps with that through Arcane Surge to provide bursts of mana regen and also cast speed for output. You can improve output through things like Scouring Winds for better exposure, or Strike Twice for 2 shocks on a target at once. Of course, Spark bringing the source or common source of stacking that damage, as well as things like Lightning Conduit. It's super well known, there's not much new I can say about it. It's fun, it's fast, and it's strong as hell, and the Ascendancy really helps this main concept. But lastly, at first, the last Ascendancy I want to discuss is Blood Mage, which interestingly is 17th on the ladder placements at the moment. Maybe that's because it's become more popular over time, or it's the fact that one of the best builds uses Temporalis, which is not so easy to get. Combined with Choir of the Storm and Blink, you can create this zipping around the map at ultra speeds build, killing everything you go near, because you've got cast on dodge, which causes blinking to proc attacks, and that combined with high crit with spark, there's a lot of potential. It's got ridiculous output, but it's a very costly setup we're talking about. Before that then, there was the potent Detonate Dead build for great survivability and mapping. The Ascend provides sort of built-in survivability through damage over time affecting you of a % of the damage you took, or gaining energy shield from body armor as extra max life. The Ascend also offers amazing output options with crit potential through crit damage and crit chance increases right there in the Ascend tree, lining directly even with the top build. So you've got a good build to work through, while aiming of course for that ridiculously expensive one that is so good. So it is of course rated very high, maybe even first. But there you have it, a little overview of the current popularity of the top 1000 and the Ascendancies and where we place them and why. Do again take it with a heavy grain of salt though. I just hope this serves as a reasonable perspective on the way things are now and what we expect for the moment. For now though, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, see you next time.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.